We'll start, but the purpose of today's press conference is really for the Santa Marta Group to explain its work in the struggle against trafficking. The Santa Marta Group is an international alliance of religious leaders and police chiefs working together with religious sisters and civil society to eliminate human trafficking and modern-day slavery. It's named after, for those who are curious, the residence of Pope Francis, and he was very much encouraging and leading at the formation of Santa Marta Group 4 years ago. If we were to encapsulate it, we would say the work of the Santa Marta Group is to foster a symbiotic relationship between law enforcement and the resources of the Catholic Church in the fight against human trafficking. So today we will say a few words at the start. The permanent observer of the Holy See of the United Nations, Archbishop Auser. On his left is Cardinal Nichols, the president and chair of the Santa Marta Group. And next to Cardinal Nichols is Hilary Chester, the director of the anti-trafficking efforts of the US Bishops' Conference. On Archbishop Auser's right is Kevin Hyland, a senior advisor to the Santa Marta Group, and also the first independent anti-slavery commissioner of the UK. And next to Kevin is Commissioner Nestor Roncaglia, who is the Argentinian police chief. He's also been heavily involved with the Santa Marta Group. Thank you very much, and over to Archbishop Auser.
Thank you very much, Alex. I would just like, first of all, to welcome the members of all the authorities of the Santa Marta Group to the United Nations. We have just come out from a meeting with the President of the General Assembly, who was not only curious about these, always like they said, Hollywood alliance between the bishops and the chiefs of police, the police officers, and the human resources of the Catholic Church, especially women religious who are really in the forefront of the fight against human trafficking and specifically in the care and rehabilitation of the victims. This afternoon, we are organizing a conference during which we will present the work of Santa Marta to the participants. So I just would like to say welcome to His Eminence Cardinal Nichols, to Commissioner Kevin Hyland, Commissioner Roncaglia, and to the representative of the Conference of Bishops here in the United States. And I will pass the microphone to them. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's 2 years since I sat at this desk giving a similar press conference after a day's meeting here in the UN of many, many people involved in the struggle against human trafficking. It was a very fascinating day. And one of the things that I learned was that in the broad spectrum of many people who contribute to this struggle, Santa Marta had a very specific and unique character and role. And it is, as you've heard, to bring together the resources and spread and presence on the ground of the Catholic Church and all that it represents, and the forces of law and order. And 2 years later, I'm able to say that that is a growing cooperation. It's growing in its breadth, in its membership, and in its efficiency. And so we've been able to report this morning on some of the progress made, the increasing membership of the Santa Marta Group, and its plans to take root in a number of regions of the world so that it is not simply a meeting every 18 months in which we can give each other information and encouragement, but it also begins to develop regional strength through centers in different parts of the world. We've heard this morning how the partnership between priests, between the church and the forces of law and order is not perhaps the most obvious one in the world. And we've also learned over these last 2 years of the importance of trust. human trust, trust in each other, again, which was not a given, which has had to be built and made, but it is such an important dynamic in this cooperation. And in order to generate trust, what is also important is honesty. And what we found at the last meeting of the Santa Marta Group was that we had got to the point of being able to talk not only about successful activities, but also failures. And that, I think, then moves a cooperation beyond a cooperation in which people want to tell their good news, in which they want to confirm, as it were, their standing, to a point in which there is genuine trust and trusting each other with our failings as well. If I could give an example, the Cardinal Archbishop Bo from Myanmar said that really in his part of the world, the problem of human trafficking was getting worse. And when he said, "I'm sorry to bring you bad news," but Archbishop Ausa said, "We'd much rather hear bad news that is true than good, which is false news." And that's the point we're at. We want to deal with what is true. It's hard, it's demanding, it can break your heart at times to hear the stories of trafficked victims, but that's the reality on which we're working together. Thank you. Kevin.
So when we look at the issue of human trafficking and modern slavery, the figures are quite shocking, that it's estimated globally that 40 million lives are currently kept in conditions of modern slavery. That's domestic servitude, forced labour, sexual exploitation, forced criminality, or for their organs. And shockingly, 16 million of those people are in our private economy. So by working collaboratively, we can actually make a difference. When we look at those numbers, it may be very difficult. But actually, it is partnerships like the Santa Marta Group that has been able to get to the core of those numbers. And I will tell you examples, for example, in Nigeria, where this was one of the main countries of origin to Europe, particularly through the routes of North Africa, where people are losing their lives, people are being exploited, people are being kept in shocking conditions before they can get enough money to travel across the dangerous routes into Europe. And then when they arrive in Europe, they can end up in a range of forms of exploitation. But it was through the Santa Marta Group that I was able to go to the heart of the problem in Edo State, somewhere where figures that come from the UN showed that was one of the main sources of those vulnerable people from within Nigeria. And from that has grown a really strong relationship where there is delivery to the communities, making them aware of what's happening on the ground, making them understand the risks, but giving them reasons to stay, and actually working with the law enforcement agencies there. So there is rule of law, and then working with the local governments, as challenging as it may be, in order to get their engagement, but also with tribal leaders and those with local influence. But what we need to do at the global level is we need to make sure that we work with communities on the ground, for example, Santa Marta Group. And from my own background, when I was head of the Metropolitan Police London Human Trafficking Unit, that's where I understood the power and the ability of the church. Religious sisters coming out on operations whereby they could give the support to the victims and survivors, whilst police they did their job of prosecuting and pursuing the criminals. But we also need to look at the opportunities for development on the international stage. How do we give development to countries where they have no opportunities? We need to work at the global stage, which is what the Santa Marta Group is starting to do, to inform what kind of development can actually take away the power of the traffickers and actually give communities the ability to thrive, whether that's in Latin America, whether that is in West Africa, whether that is in Southeast Asia, or whether that is in London. And then we need to make sure that the laws are efficient and effective and dealt with compassionately. And I think my friend from Argentina will speak more of that. So 40 million are suffering. And we need to make sure that businesses are accountable. As I say, 16 million are in that. In the UK, we have transparency in supply chain legislation, whereby businesses have to account for what they are doing if they trade over 36 million to make sure that their companies are not trading in modern slavery or human trafficking. But the response to that has been patchy. But we are seeing other countries join that, such as Australia, such as Canada considering new legislation, Sweden and France. But we also see countries like Nigeria and Uganda exploring their legislation. But we need to make sure that no business in the world actually thrives on human trafficking or modern slavery. For example, the mobile phones we have in our pockets will be powered by coltan, which may have been mined in the Congo by children as young as 4. No business should have that in its supply chain. And it is actually organisations like the Santa Marta Group that can reach out and identify where that's happening, but also help with solutions. So I think the world has moved on in the last 2 years. We now have sustainable development goals and opportunities to address this, but we are at the start of a very difficult road. And I think it will take a lot of efforts, a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnership, but as the Cardinal says, trust. And once we have all that, then I think we can start to see that we are making this a crime of the past and putting it into the history books where it should have been placed a very long time ago.
¿Va a traducir? Hola. Yo creo que ya
I believe that
los compañeros de este equipo, de este gran grupo que es Santa Marta, ya expusieron
the friends of this group, of this grand group, Santa Marta Group,
sobre la génesis de creación en el año 2014 de este grupo,
based on the genesis of the birth of this group in
Que tiene-
1994,
que tiene como objetivo el combatir la trata de personas, tanto sexual como laboral, en el mundo.
which has as an objective to address trafficking of human persons and things.
Como policía y como jefe de policía federal en mi país, en Argentina,
As a police officer and chief of police in my country of Argentina,
celebro esta oportunidad de participar en este grupo.
I celebrate this opportunity to share with the Santa Marta Group.
Celebro esta oportunidad de tomar conciencia
I also celebrate this time to take
de,
into conscience
de este flagelo actual, de este momento,
of what is happening currently in this world.
que es la esclavitud moderna. Yo pensé que
That
la
is
esclavitud
that
había
is in the form of
desaparecido,
modern slavery.
pero escuchando a las víctimas en las reuniones que hemos tenido en Santa Marta, en Londres, en España,
And listening to the victims that we have engaged with in
Hicieron-
London, and
que como funcionario policial tomemos conciencia de la dimensión de la gravedad de este delito.
have allowed us to take into consideration the gravity of the issue and the dimensions by which these victims are affected.
Y bueno, la idea de esta alianza estratégica entre la Iglesia
The idea of this strategic alliance between
y las fuerzas de
us and
seguridad,
the
o los
church
jefes de policía, o los
and the chief of
encargados
police and those
de
in charge
aplicar la ley,
and those who are entrusted with the rule of law.
yo creo que es primordial
It is
para
primordial
combatir este flagelo
to combat
moderno.
this form of modern slavery.
Así que desde mi óptica es
From my
importante,
perspective, it is
es
important
importante tomar conciencia,
To take into consideration and
sensibilizarnos
and
de
to
la
be sensible
dimensión
to the new
de los
dimensions
daños de este delito.
of the devastation of these crimes.
Solo entendiendo,
Only by
conociendo la
understanding
enfermedad,
and understanding
haciendo un buen diagnóstico, vamos a tener una buena medicina.
it's an analogy to health, and by understanding the conditions, the gravity of the conditions, can we be able to address the diagnostic, right? The diagnosis, excuse me.
Así que la idea que tenemos acá, dirigidos por el Cardenal Nichols,
And so the idea that we have by Cardinal Nichols,
es entre todos, unidos,
between all of us united
juntos,
together,
la idea es de elaborar estrategia para que
The
este
idea is
delito,
strategically-
que no reconoce frontera de países,
that
¿sí?
does not address or
funciona
consider
igual
the
que el
boundaries
tráfico de drogas.
of territory.
¿sí? Es internacional, no hay límites, es globalizado.
There are no limits, there are no global limits to be able to have this group address the issue together.
Y en consecuencia tenemos que trabajar organizadamente en todo el mundo.
And in that we need to work together for the rest of the world.
Así que bueno, la idea es trabajar juntos y,
The idea is to
y
work together.
desalentar esta idea de someter al hombre por el hombre. Gracias.
And to really bring about awareness of the sacrifice of trafficking, right? A man or a woman in that case. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and our anti-trafficking programs here in the U.S. My intent really is to share some of the partnerships that we have with our federal law enforcement partners at the national level, such as Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security investigations, all the way down, though, to the parish level, where there are relationships being built between the faith community at the parish level with communities who are very much at risk and are experiencing trafficking, communities that may not have the strongest or most trusting relationships with law enforcement. And what we see is our faith partners, especially women religious and the Catholic charities, are able to build those bridging relationships and help build trust between the communities most impacted by trafficking and law enforcement, who really are there to bring about investigations, interdictions, and ideally help put traffickers out of business.